Metzora. On a leap year, first reading, Abraham, Chesed. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, This is the law of the leper at the time of his cleansing, when he is brought to the priest. And the priest is to go outside the camp, and the priest is to examine and see if the plague of leprosy is healed in the leper. Then the priest shall command that 2 live clean birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop be brought for the one to be cleansed. Then the priest shall command that one of the birds be killed over running water in a clay pot. He is then to take the live bird and dip it, together with the cedar wood, the scarlet yarn, and the hyssop, into the blood of the bird that was killed over the running water. And he shall sprinkle the one to be cleansed of the leprosy 7 times and pronounce him clean, and then he is to release the live bird in the open fields. The person to be cleansed must wash his clothes and shave off all his hair and bathe himself in water, and he will be clean. After this he may come into the camp, but he must stay outside his tent for 7 days. On the 7th day he must shave off all his hair. He must shave his head, his beard, his eyebrows, and the rest of his hair. He must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water, and he will be clean. And on the 8th day he must bring 2 male lambs without blemish, and 1 ewe lamb a year old without blemish, along with 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil for a grain offering, and 1 log of oil. The priest who cleansed him shall present both the one to be cleansed and his offerings before the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Then the priest is to take one of the male lambs and offer it as a guilt offering, along with the log of oil. He shall wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. Metzora. On a leap year, second reading, Isaac, Gevurah. He is to slaughter the lamb in the holy place where the sin offering and the burnt offering are slaughtered. Like the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is most holy. The priest is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest shall then take some of the log of oil, pour it in the palm of his own left hand, dip his right forefinger into the oil in his left palm, and with his finger sprinkle some of it before the Lord 7 times. The priest is to put some of the oil remaining in his palm on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on top of the blood of the guilt offering. The rest of the oil in his palm the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, and make atonement for him before the Lord. Then the priest is to sacrifice the sin offering, and make atonement for the one to be cleansed from his uncleanness. After that, the priest shall slaughter the burnt offering, and offer it on the altar, together with the grain offering, and the priest will make atonement for him, and he will be clean. Metzora. On a leap year, third reading, Jacob, Tiferet. When connected, fifth reading, Aaron, Hod. If, however, he is poor and cannot afford these, he must take 1 male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved to make atonement for him, together with 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, for a grain offering, a log of oil, and 2 doves or 2 young pigeons, whichever he can afford, 1 for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering. On the 8th day he must bring them for his cleansing to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting before the Lord. The priest is to take the lamb for the guilt offering, together with the log of oil, and wave them before the Lord as a wave offering. He shall slaughter the lamb for the guilt offering, and take some of its blood, and put it on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The priest is to pour some of the oil into the palm of his own left hand, and with his right forefinger sprinkle some of the oil from his left palm 7 times before the Lord. Some of the oil in his palm he is to put on the same places he put the blood of the guilt offering, on the lobe of the right ear of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. The rest of the oil in his palm the priest shall put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before the Lord. Then he shall sacrifice the doves or the young pigeons, whichever the person can afford, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, together with the grain offering, whichever the person can afford. The priest will make atonement before the Lord on behalf of the one to be cleansed. These are the regulations for anyone who has an infectious skin disease and who cannot afford the regular offerings for his cleansing. Metzora. On a leap year, 4th reading, Moses, Netzach. When connected, 6th reading, Joseph, Yesod. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, When you enter the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as your possession, and I put the plague of leprosy in a house in that land, the owner of the house must go and tell the priest, I have seen something that looks like a plague in my house. The priest is to order the house to be emptied before he goes in to examine the plague, so that nothing in the house will be pronounced unclean. After this, the priest is to go in and inspect the house. He is to examine the plague and see if the plague is on the walls of the house with greenish or reddish depressions that appear to be deeper than the surface of the wall. Then the priest shall go out the doorway of the house and close it up for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall return to inspect and see if the plague has spread on the walls of the house. Then the priest must command that the plagued stones be torn out and thrown into an unclean place outside the town, and he must have all the inside walls of the house scraped, and the material that is scraped off dumped into an unclean place outside the town. Then they are to take other stones to replace these, and take new clay and plaster the house. If the plague reappears in the house after the stones have been torn out and the house scraped and plastered, then the priest is to go and examine it and see if the plague has spread in the house. It is a malignant leprosy in the house. It is unclean. And he must tear down the house, its stones, timbers, and all the plaster, and take these out of the town to an unclean place. Anyone who goes into the house while it is closed up will be unclean till evening. Anyone who sleeps in the house must wash his clothes, and anyone who eats in the house must wash his clothes. And if the priest comes to examine it and sees the plague has not spread after the house has been plastered, he shall pronounce the house clean, because the plague is healed. To purify the house, he is to take 2 birds and some cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop, and he must kill one of the birds over running water in a clay pot. Then he is to take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird, dip them into the blood of the dead bird and the running water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. He must purify the house with the bird's blood, the running water, the live bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet yarn. Then he is to release the live bird in the open fields outside the town. In this way he will make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. Metzora. On a leap year, 5th reading, Aaron, Hod. This is the law for all the types of the plague of leprosy, for a scaly eruption, and for leprosy in clothing or in a house, and for a swelling, and for a scab, and for a bright spot, to determine when it is unclean and when it is clean. This is the law of leprosy. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, when any man has a bodily discharge, the discharge is unclean. Whether it continues flowing from his body or is blocked, it will make him unclean. This is how his discharge will bring about uncleanness. Any bed the man with a discharge lies on will be unclean, and anything he sits on will be unclean. Anyone who touches his bed must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till the evening. Whoever sits on anything that the man with a discharge sat on must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till the evening. Whoever touches the man who has a discharge must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till the evening. If the man with a discharge spits on someone who is clean, that person must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till the evening. Everything the man sits on when riding will be unclean, and whoever touches any of the things that were under him will be unclean till evening. Whoever picks up those things must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till the evening. Anyone the man with a discharge touches without rinsing his hands with water must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till evening. A clay pot that the man touches must be broken, and any wooden article is to be rinsed in water. When a man is cleansed from his discharge, he is to count off 7 days for his cleansing, and he must wash his clothes and bathe himself with running water, and he will be clean. On the 8th day, he must take 2 doves or 2 young pigeons and come before the Lord to the entrance to the tent of meeting and give them to the priest. The priest is to sacrifice them, the one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering, and the priest will make atonement before the Lord for the man because of his discharge. Metzora. On a leap year, 6th reading, Joseph, Yesod. When connected, 7th reading, David, Malchut. When a man has an emission of semen, he must bathe his whole body with water, and he will be unclean till evening. Any clothing or leather that has semen on it must be washed with water, and it will be unclean till evening. When a man lies with a woman and there is an emission of semen, both must bathe with water, and they will be unclean till the evening. When a woman has her regular flow of blood, the impurity of her monthly period will last 7 days, and anyone who touches her will be unclean till the evening. Anything she lies on during her period will be unclean, and anything she sits on will be unclean. Whoever touches her bed must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till the evening. Whoever touches anything she sits on must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till the evening. Whether it is the bed or anything she was sitting on, when anyone touches it, he will be unclean till the evening. If a man lies with her and her monthly flow touches him, he will be unclean for 7 days. Any bed he lies on will be unclean. When a woman has a discharge of blood for many days at a time other than her monthly period, or has a discharge that continues beyond her period, she will be unclean as long as she has the discharge, just as in the days of her period. Any bed she lies on while her discharge continues will be unclean, as is her bed during her monthly period, and anything she sits on will be unclean, as during her period. Whoever touches them will be unclean. He must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean till the evening. When she is cleansed from her discharge, she must count off 7 days, and after that she will be clean. Metzora. On a leap year, 7th reading, David, Malchut. On the 8th day, she must take 2 doves or 2 young pigeons and bring them to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting. The priest is to sacrifice one for a sin offering and the other for a burnt offering, and the priest will make atonement for her before the Lord for the uncleanness of her discharge. Metzora, maftir. You must keep the Israelites separate from things that make them unclean, so they will not die in their uncleanness for defiling my dwelling place, which is among them. This is the law for a man with a discharge, for anyone made unclean by an emission of semen, for a woman in her monthly period, for a man or a woman with a discharge, and for a man who lies with a woman who is unclean. Haftarah of Metzora, 2 Kings 7:3-20. And there were 4 men with leprosy at the entrance of the city gate. They said to each other, "Why stay here until we die? If we say, 'We'll go into the city,' then the famine is in the city and we will die. And if we sit here, we will die. So let's go over to the camp of the Arameans and surrender. If they spare us, we live, and if they kill us, then we die." At dusk they got up and went to the camp of the Arameans. And when they reached the edge of the Aramean camp, not a man was there. For the Lord had caused the army of the Arameans to hear the sound of chariots and horses and a great army, so that they said to one another, "Look, the king of Israel has hired the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to attack us." So they got up and fled in the dusk, and abandoned their tents and their horses and donkeys, and left the camp as it was, and ran for their lives. And when these men who had leprosy reached the edge of the camp and entered one of the tents, they ate and drank, and carried away silver and gold and clothes, and went and hid them. And they returned and entered another tent, and took some things from it, and hid them also. Then they said to one another, "We are not doing right. This day is a day of good news, and we hold our peace. If we wait until daylight, some mischief will come upon us. Let's go at once and report this to the king's household." So they went and called out to the gatekeepers of the city and told them, saying, "We went to the camp of the Arameans, and behold, not a man was there, not a sound of anyone, but tethered horses and tethered donkeys, and the tents left just as they were." And he called the gatekeepers, and they told it to the king's house within. And the king rose in the night and said to his servants, "I will now show you what the Arameans have done to us. They know we are hungry, so they have left the camp to hide themselves in the fields, saying, 'When they come out of the city, we shall catch them alive and get into the city.'" And one of his servants answered and said, "Have some men, I pray you, take 5 of the horses that are left in the city, and behold, they are as the multitude of Israel that are left in it. Behold, I say, they are even as all the multitude of the Israelites who are consumed. And let us send and see." They took therefore 2 chariots with their horses, and the king sent them after the Aramean army, saying, "Go and see." And they followed them as far as the Jordan, and all the way was strewn with clothing and vessels which the Arameans had thrown away in their haste. And the messengers returned and told the king. And the people went out and plundered the camp of the Arameans. So a measure of flour was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley sold for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. And the king appointed the captain on whose arm he leaned to have charge of the gate. And the people trampled on him in the gate, and he died, as the man of God had said when the king came down to him. And it came to pass, as the man of God had spoken to the king, saying, 2 measures of barley for a shekel, and 1 measure of flour for a shekel shall be tomorrow this time at the gate of Samaria. And that captain answered the man of God and said, "Now look, if the Lord should make windows in heaven, might such a thing be?" And he said, "Look, you shall see it with your own eyes, but you will not eat any of it." It came to pass even so unto him, for the people trampled him in the gate, and he died.